To nutshell everything, as a way to show thanks for 16K, I let y'all decide what the challenge for Sonic and the Secret Ring should be. The suggestion that won was beating the game without tilting. This means we can't move Sonic left or right. Well, at least by normal means. While in the midst of making that video, I realized that 2 of the missions that can't be completed can actually be completed with specific skills. However, those skills can't be acquired when starting a brand new save file, so I was like, this challenge seems interesting enough to do again, only this time let's try to complete every single mission with a high-leveled Sonic. No new save file, every skill already unlocked, every mission at our disposal. Secret Rings is infamous for its cumbersome motion controls, so let's be a little less reliant on them for this next playthrough. How many missions in Sonic and the Secret Rings can be completed without tilting the Wiimote? Of course, the goal is to clear as many missions as possible without tilting the Wiimote. We can't manually move Sonic left or right, however, other motion control actions like using the homing attack or rotating to move backwards are still allowed. Also, just so we're all on the same page, this is tilting the Wiimote, and this is rotating the Wiimote. The game makes that abundantly clear in the tutorial. Also, for the people who watched the first Secret Rings video, yes, we are still indeed ballin'. And as usual, just like the rest of these challenges I've done, I'll be doing this on actual hardware. Now, let's start all of this off and begin by getting lost in the prologue of Lost Prologue. For paragraph 1, our objective is to collect 50 rings. Without tilting, we can gather just above 40, as a fair share of them were in the center. When we use the boost panels at the end, it will turn us around and we'll start backtracking to the beginning. Sonic will grab a few more on the way back, but it still doesn't meet the total. You might be wondering, well, there's a boost panel at the beginning. When it turns us around, we would just be retracing our steps and not collect any more rings, right? Well, no. Secret Rings is like really weird with its on-rails automation. I'll give you an example in Sand Oasis. Sonic is moving forwards in the center of the hallway, but making this left turn puts him on the right wall. My hands were nowhere near the controller that entire time. Another weird thing that can happen, I've never actually noticed this in the first video, when running along a curve, Sonic will shift more to the side depending on how fast he's going. I'll give y'all a good example of this later in the video, but basically what I'm trying to say is, even though we're not tilting the Wiimote, Sonic can still get off center when running. Here in the first level, after using the boost panel at the start, Sonic is clearly off center and has moved over to the left. He shifted over far enough to fetch the remaining amount to complete the mission. Now, even after showing the proof, there may still be some people questioning if the Wiimote is being sensitive with its motion controls. I mean, I don't blame you, it's a fair point. So, to help me with my work, I decided to get help from a Dolphin colleague of mine.
Can you believe Kodos?
It might not look like it, but he knew how to carefully control the motion controls on his controller. Main thing is tilting left and right is now designated to his left and right D-pads, and moving backwards is now on his down D-pad, so Sonic should have no chance of fidgeting while moving forwards. When we compared our work, they were shockingly spot on. We basically wrote down the same thing. Throughout the video, I'll be showing a mixture of what I recorded on my Wii, or at least what's left of it, and what the Dolphin recorded, because some of these missions, I really needed his help. What you're watching right now is still paragraph 1, but this time it's the Dolphin's footage. Sonic hits the boost pad, and he still goes to the left, further proving that this is a normal thing that happens in the game. Paragraphs 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all very short, simple missions that try to teach us the basic fundamentals. I'm clumping them all together because none of them gave us any trouble. There's no use going into great detail with easy missions like these, so we can just skim over them. In paragraph 6, we need to collect 25 rings while moving backwards. This was the first mission that originally was not possible, as Sonic was able to only collect 21 of them. What we were lacking back then was a skill called Ring Bonus. It lets us start every mission with 5 rings. So now when we replay the level with that skill, it changes our 21 rings to 26. which lets us pass with flying colors. The reason why we couldn't obtain that skill in the first video is because we couldn't get any more XP to level up. We only had Lost Prologue levels available at that time, and they only give experience the first time they've been completed. Replaying them does absolutely nothing. Paragraph 7 wants us to do some short hops. A neat thing about this mission is that it doesn't keep track of how much stuff we jumped over, rather just how many times the A button has been tapped. We still have a ways to go, but the tally in the top right corner is already at 10. For paragraph 8, we straight up did not have to touch the controller. Seriously, it plays itself. I went out of the room to get some water, and when I came back, the results screen was up. Paragraph 9 and 10 taught us how to use our two soul abilities, Speed Break and Time Break. The former is a nerfed version of the boost, while the latter lets us slow down time. Both were incredibly basic, so no tilts needed. Paragraphs 11, 12, 13, and 14 were all very cookie-cutter practice missions. Now, paragraph 15 is similar to 6, gather some rings while moving backwards. However, instead of simply having a certain number of rings, they want us to collect them while doing a specific action, that being the back step. We execute it by rotating the Wiimote towards us and pressing 2. Simply getting them doesn't count towards the tally, but getting them while doing the thing does. That puts us in a bit of a pickle. They're asking us to obtain 10 rings while doing that, and even though we can have 11 thanks to ring bonus, we can only have 6 of them count towards the tally. I tried bumping into the invisible wall at the front to help us move over, but that didn't work as I hoped. There was one crazy idea that I thought was worth a shot. It involves 2 skills, Soul Devourer and Sub-S Search. We fill up our soul gauge by landing with Soul Devourer, and then use Time Break to turn on Sub-S Surge. It says it enables us to lock onto objects while in Time Break. What kind of objects? I don't know, a ring is an object, right? So I jumped in place to give us some juice, stepped back, slowed down time, and yeah, I kind of expected this not to work. But it doesn't hurt to try. I really don't like that there's a mission in the tutorial that can't be beat, but, you know, sometimes it really do be like that. Paragraph 16 is all about a very important and, frankly, busted skill called Splash Jump. With this equipped, it gives us an upwards boost when we jump dash into a wall. What normally would have been considered an obstacle is now obsolete. Here's an example. In the first challenge, these protruding walls from Evil Foundry were once a hindrance as they were too high to jump over, so we needed to find a way around them. Now with Splash Jump, we don't need to go around them, we literally go over them. We are going to be abusing that as much as possible. The next 3 are about 3 skills that give us a boost when we time an input before the countdown reaches 0. Why they didn't mesh all of them into one single mission is beyond me. The Warp Dash mission does deserve a mention because it has very tall walls. If we tried splash jumping, Sonic won't be able to vault over it. That's because we're doing it at point blank range. To clear them, move backwards, and then jump dash into them. That way, the arch from the jump dash carries us slightly upwards before splash jumping, which will be enough to let us rise above the magical screens. The last 2 missions do not teach us anything new, instead they simply ask us to reach the goal in a specific time limit. Paragraph 20 had very little to it, so we did it on our first try. 21, not so much. There's a grinding section that expects us to switch between rails by jumping and tilting. Without tilting, the railings are just out of our reach to jump between them. While on the first one, tapping the 1 button once does slow us down enough to successfully clip onto the second railing when Sonic rams into the spike ball. After that, we're kinda just stuck. The other side is too far away to clear the gap, and for some reason, the splash jump doesn't take effect when colliding with the lower side of the edge. Jumping onto the second spike ball doesn't push us towards the third railing on the left, nor does bumping into it. Chalk that up for another mission that we can't do, but hey, that was the end of the tutorials! We can now let the speed mend in Sand Oasis. The first mission of each world is set up like a normal Sonic level. Reach the goal at the end of a lengthy level. Every following mission is shorter with a quirky objective. This main mission was actually the other mission that originally wasn't possible in the first challenge. Near the end, Sonic needs to slide across what I called a scooching section, where we tilt the Wiimote to scooch Sonic across the sledge. Originally, we couldn't do it because we were very underleveled to go the full distance, and again, there was no way to grind for XP. Since Sonic is now outrageously buff, he can overcome this obstacle effortlessly. Look at how much farther he is sliding. It is ridiculous. The rest of the main level was straightforward. Now for the missions with quirky objectives. The first one we got is a Die Hard challenge, where we must reach the end without getting defeated. A lot of these missions can be taken at our own pace, so not dying here is definitely in our control. Next is Head to Head, or a race with Uhu the Wind Genie. Sonic's speed is practically maxed out, so he's gonna be lagging behind quite a bit. The No Pearl objective is pretty self-explanatory. First, take off any Pearl Collector skills. This will make it more lenient with how close we can stand by the pearls before we collect them. Running at Mach 10 is of course going to be a hindrance since we need to react to what's in front of us. Lowering Sonic's top speed would definitely make this easier, but I am too damn stubborn to make those changes, so I am tediously hopping through the levels like a crazy person. Don't be like me. If there's an easier way to do something, please do it! My first time through, I completely forgot we weren't supposed to kill the enemies because they are in fact filled with pearls, so they get to live to see another day. Right after them is a giant ring of pearls with a spring on the other side. There is a small opening we can squeeze through, but Sonic is slightly off-center to successfully pull that off. While we're still waiting in the water, we can jump on one of the spears and that will slightly push us to the right. That should be enough for us to safely perform our circus trick. We're not safe just yet. On this elevated strip is a line of pearls on each side. For absolutely no reason, Sonic's forward line of direction is skewed up here. You can see him slowly approaching the pearls. We also can't jump dash because of the genies, so instead, charge a jump by the fourth to last pearl, then release it to leap above the remaining few, then run up the wall to clear the mission. Following that is a special challenge. The objective for these are much more unique than the others, and no two are the same. This one is asking us to complete the mission without breaking any jars. This was my main grinding spot for the first challenge, so I knew the layout like the back of my hand. Our second Die Hard challenge is up next. I could say the exact same thing as the last Die Hard challenge. Here is Beat the Clock, which is essentially a time trial. They gave us 120 seconds, but that number will vary between missions. With Sonic being the fastest thing alive, this was nothing to him. Up next is a perfect challenge where we have to reach the goal without taking damage. The Aegislider skill is a must-have for these missions, as it straight up makes us invincible while sliding. What you're watching on screen looks illegal, but trust me, this is how the skill was designed. Special challenge number 2, break 5 jars. Lucky for us, the pottery had homing reticles on them. Nice and simple. Now we have collect rings. I think that speaks for itself. 99 is the number we're aiming for. Again, we can go about this without haste. Just go deeper into the hallway and carefully avoid any traps and hazards while hoarding the goodies. This upcoming mission is a rampage. Rampage, I'm sorry. I kept accidentally mispronouncing that in the last video, and I think it's just because I haven't heard the word in such a long time. I don't know, does that, happen to anyone else? Anyway, Rampage is where we go on a Djinn killing spree. 20 of them were on the bounty, and Sonic had no trouble with taking care of them. Following that is another new one, Chain of Rings. Chain together a ring combo of the desired amount. This one requests a chain of 60. Very quickly, we can see how scattered most of the ring placements are. However, there is an easy way to complete this one. In this mission, there are many rings lined up in the middle of straight hallways. The road leading to them, however, are curved, so while Sonic is running, he will shift to the side and be off-center when entering the hallways. Now, I have no idea why it works like this, but if we jump into the wall of the first straight hallway, instead of running into it, Sonic will get pushed farther into the center, which is just enough to collect the rings in the middle. I have no idea why it works like that, but, I mean, it's easy. Before finishing up World 1, we must first wrangle with the poisonous spear of Sand Scorpion. Testing, post-production mod here, over. So, to put it simply, fighting the bosses with a maxed out Sonic is incredibly one-sided. At such a high level, we can bypass most of the projectiles by literally just running, and the Aegislider skill protects us from all of their attacks if used correctly. Basically, just follow the normal strategy for each battle and you're as good as gold. There is one exception, but we'll cross that bridge later. Moving on. After defeating the arthropod, we found our way into the wicked wild of Dinosaur Jungle. This world has a unique gimmick where Sonic will surf on top of a log. This is usually a bad sign when we come across it. The only thing we can do here is tilt the Wiimote to steer us left and right. 9 times out of 10, there's a spike ball right where the current carries us, and there's nothing we can do about it. It's on a set course every time, so no skill from the skill ring can help us out here. This means that the Go for the Goal mission that you've been currently watching, and the Die Hard challenge that immediately follows, are both impossible. Next is another Collect Rings. Just like the last one, we need 99 of them in our pocket. Jump over the first obstacle, and then run into the second one. This will push us over to the right, directly behind a handful of rings. We will take damage from the cactus, but with the Ring Saver skill, Sonic will only lose 10 rings instead of 20. Once we step foot into this shady strip, we're going to purposefully get hit again. This cactus to the right must push us back into the middle behind this silver ring. Those are worth 20 rings. The level can finish the rest by itself, so we can use that free time to like and subscribe to Maud. That's a female name and I'm a dude. I am just now putting that together. Perfect challenge, don't take damage. This one was more than doable, although I am very ashamed to admit that it took me about 30 minutes to complete despite it being very straightforward. Look, with all of these skills, Sonic can go from 0 to 100 at the drop of a hat, and for some reason, I don't feel like slowing him down to make this easier. The following Rampage and Stealth Attack were as easy said as easy done. As for the rematch with Uhu, he still has a lot of catching up to do. Chain of Rings. This time we're aiming for a combo of 30. To my absolute surprise, we did this on our first try. Unlike the one in Sand Oasis, the ring placements were much more forgiving and the path itself was much skinnier. This world's first special challenge is about smashing 5 genie eggs. They were all on the path, so crushing them wasn't an issue. The second special challenge is titled Get the Pterosaur Egg. The shtick for this mission is to carry 4 dinosaur eggs to their correct nest. The pattern on the egg must match the pattern on the signpost. This one technically has a bit of RNG to it. The placements of the eggs and the nests will be randomized each time. While the wonky placements can be very annoying, there is an interesting trick we can utilize here. The layout is set up like a circle, there is no end to the map. However, it does contain numerous checkpoints. Crossing one of them will save the number of eggs we've already returned home, so if we accidentally pass away, we might not have to start from scratch. Here's the kicker. While our progress won't be lost, all of the eggs and the nests will respawn and get shuffled around, even the ones we've already returned home. Dropping off another egg still adds to the counter. In other words, we can safely kill ourselves in-game to reorganize everything, so this stressful, unfun mission is now slightly more bearable to complete. Collect rings, 99 of them to be exact. This one is a bit of a slogfest. The first half is perfectly fine. Defeat the enemies, open the chest, collect the silver ring, repeat that 3 times. The second half contains 2 log riding sections. Jumping onto the first log is kinda luck-based. I think either the timing is really strict, or the other spike balls are moving at a different rate. Waiting for the spike ball to orbit to the top of the rock works about, 25% of the time. It might let us off in the clear, it might not. Next, fly upwards using the jar, jump out of it, then fall to the ground on the other side. Step back to hit the switch to make the chest appear so we can grab our 4th silver ring. Now on the second log, there are 2 spike balls orbiting a giant rock. Hiding inside of it is the 5th silver ring. so all we need to do is squeeze between the two hazards to pay our mortgage. And lastly, no pearls. In summary, this one is a big fat no, all because of the second log ride. There is one tiny little pearl that just so happens to be in our path. Woe is me, woe is you. Escaping the wilderness, we have found the palace, Evil Foundry. Near the end of the level, we have to run up a wall with moving meat grinders on it. One to the left, one in the middle, and one to the right. There's a teeny tiny space in between them where Sonic is able to squeeze by without taking damage, so the solution is to find out how to align him in that space. The problem is there is no way to do that. I tried everything I could, but nothing seemed to work. Grinding on either of the railings doesn't put us in a good position, having the spike ball push us all the way over to the right doesn't let us clear it, everything else is also a dud. There's just no way to place Sonic in the right spot. Strangely enough, the same exact obstacle appears in the following Die Hard challenge. This time we have a much easier time repositioning Sonic, as there are two spinning gins. Wait for one of them to be close to the left wall, and homing attack them to move Sonic. Slowly and steadily hop around the corner, and that should be enough to not take damage and make it to the end. Here's another new one, Hands Off. We have to reach the goal without any rings. This is the first time I have ever deselected the ring bonus skill. It lets us start every mission with 5 rings. Now that we have our pockets empty, all that needs to be done is to avoid anything and everything. Normally, if any rings were collected, we could just take damage to lose them, but in this one, that's more difficult to do. The only harmful things in this mission are a few basic genies who are in less than desirable positions, so we need to make this a perfect run. Head to head, race against Uhu. Believe it or not, we actually had to work for this one. The main hindrance was the layout of the level. The previous two were much more open and simple with very few things in the way, but this one had a lot more obstacles. Not just the boxes and the tall canisters, but also a few pits and some awkwardly placed platforms, all of which slow us down significantly. Even after following this specific route to optimize for the best time, we still just barely came in first. Unironically though, had a great time with this one, would recommend. Next, we have to race against the clock and find the exit before a bomb explodes. In the original challenge, this mission took about, I think 8 hours to complete, partially because we grinded Sonic up to an apprehensively high level, and also because, despite the massive improvements to his stats, he still couldn't skim across this massive scooching section. What you're watching on screen is the strategy I used to overcome this baffling blockade. At that time, Sonic could only run as fast as the hyper speed up skill would allow him to. However, there's another skill that I've heard doubles our top speed, that being Crest of Wind. We couldn't unlock it back then because there weren't enough missions to get gold medals from. Now that it's at our disposal, I decided to take a crack at this one again, just to see if this new skill would be enough to clear it. It is disgustingly close, but we can just barely slide over to the other side. Next is a painless stealth attack. So some stealth attacks are shockingly short and simple, so Sonic can slide safely and soundly through his surroundings. Here's another hands-off mission. I think this one took less than 10 seconds to beat, plus the rings were only in the way back. They can easily be flown over. Perfect challenge, don't take damage. Aegislider. Rampage, defeat 20 enemies. This is a certified yep moment. Collect rings. The rings were kinda spread out sparingly, so we need a lot of patience and no wrong moves, but it is definitely possible given time. Perfect challenge, don't take any damage. Aegislider. Chain of rings, get a combo of 50 rings. Oh my goodness, why were the first 50 rings in the middle with us? And lastly, the Ifrit Golem could not do. So next, we visit the levitating ruins of Levitated Ruin. No worries about the main level. Even the final Rook, with its obnoxiously high winds and the annoying pillar stubs, were easy to overcome, mainly because of a super fast Sonic and the splash jump. Rampage, defeat one enemy. We absolutely Tarzan that shit and became the king of swing. Both the next race with Uhu and the Perfect Challenge had some very slight complications that could easily be resolved. The same cannot be said about rescuing Sinbad. In order to break him out of prison, we need to pull 4 levers by tilting the Wiimote. So he's gonna spend the rest of his days behind bars. Why did you get locked up anyway? Okay, see, if I were you, I would have put the bowl first.
Your mom.
Don't you dare bring her into this. Die Hard Challenge, don't get defeated. Aegislider. For the hands-off mission in this world, we primarily ride on a zipline. Almost all of the rings are in the middle, and Sonic only gets hit about 3 times the entire trip. To add insult to injury, even if the last hazard could bring us down to 0, they added 2 rings right after that. Now, let me show you how we finagle this one. There's no game-breaking glitch to this. The only thing we're utilizing here is a skill. Sub-Sea Devourer. When Sonic lands on the ground normally, Soul will be added to our Soul gauge. However, each time we do that, we also lose 5 rings. You know exactly where I'm going with this. Once off the zip line, we can continually jump up and down the road right before the goal. You can tell it works when the dark aura materializes around Sonic. It doesn't matter if we have 5 rings, or 40 rings, or a million bajillion rings, as long as we have this skill on, we can make ourselves broke. I won't be relying on this skill that much because that would be way too easy, so I'll only turn to that as a last resort. The next perfect challenge, the next rampage, the beat the clock, and the collect rings were all practically on easy mode. And finishing it off, no pearls. It ain't happening. The first zipline has pearls in the center. With another world down, let's try and find our way through Pirate Storm. In the middle of the level, Sonic gets shot out of a cannon onto a pirate ship. Once we land, we quickly see there is a massive wall blocking our path. It's impossible to jump over, and there's nothing to homing attack to move Sonic over to the left or right staircases. So, how do we get past this part? Easy. When we're about to reach the poop deck, a short cutscene plays. During that moment, we have to hold down the 1 button, and that, for some reason, rockets Sonic to the left. From there, we continually jump forwards, bump into the wall, and step backwards. At first, it might not look like it, but Sonic is very slowly moving to the left each time that happens. I'm going to say this works the way it does because Sonic's forward direction is ever so slightly skewed, or maybe the rocking of the ship also plays a factor into this. I don't know, y'all, but no tilts are being used here. That's the important thing. Man, we are still going at it, huh? Whoop, there he goes! The following pirate ship also gave us a little bit of trouble. At the top platform of the second mast, there's a switch on top that needs to be activated. The pole in front of us prevents us from moving forward, since we're now stuck on center. To wangle out of this one, do the following. Drop back down to the main deck, then interact with the spring to enter the first jar. Once we get to the apex of our flight, have Sonic exit the jar and intentionally collide with the spike ball. Thanks to how it's orbiting around the mast, it will softly bop us off center. That will be enough to let us fidget around the pole's collision and make it to the goal. For this next Wind Genie race, I think we can all agree that Uhu is past his prime and he needs to retire. Then we tried to plunder 100 rings from 2 different pirate ships. To bluntly put it, they did a really good job of hiding their treasure from us. No pearls. This one is a frickin' roller coaster. After the first set of spinning blades, there is a large curve. If we're moving too quickly during this part, Sonic will shift a tiny bit over to the right. So here we have to slowly jump along the trail of rings. You'll see why I'm doing this in a second, because right after this we have a massive pearls. We have to jump over the first strip, Aegislide under the arch, then quickly jump again over the next line, and press 2 to drop down before the crossed arches. Here is what happens if we didn't go slowly while moving along the curve. Sonic would have slightly moved over and grabbed a pearl on his right side. Another reason why we went slowly is for the part with the spike balls falling down the slope. If Sonic is lined up correctly, he should be able to slide in between the 2 platforms surrounded by pearls and hit the middle spring. From there, we have to quickly homing attack the 3 swords to launch us onto the grind rail, ride underneath the first set of pearls, then time a jump over the second set of pearls. And the final obstacle, this monstrosity. Normally we'd have to slide through the middle of all these arches. However, the grind rail positions Sonic more to the left when he gets off. So instead, we would slowly slide about halfway down until we find an opening we like. Jump up, and jump dash all the way to the launch ramp. From there, homing attack the cages while the genies are not in them to reach the goal. The Rampage mission right after was unnecessarily irritating with the excessive barrage of cannonballs. But it's going to take a lot more than that if you want to protect your crewmates. Hands off. Because of the excessive amount of cannonballs being shot, there were plenty of fires to douse our rings in. Only other thing to mention is this massive cargo joint at the end. It is filled to the brim with gold. There's a position to the left of the lowest set of rings where we can safely reach the end. And let me show you just how we're going to get in that position. We bump into the wooden boards, backstep a little bit, then short hop and run into the boards again. Each time we repeat this, Sonic slightly shifts over to the left. I am 90% sure this is possible because we're doing this on a curve in the road. Secret Rings is just really weird like that. No tilts were needed, so this is fair game. Next is Beat the Clock. I mean, Sonic, he can really move, he's got an attitude, he's the fastest thing alive, I think it's pretty obvious. Chain of Rings. Nah, this ain't happening. The ring placements are way too varied, Sonic gets inconveniently repositioned way too often. Have I mentioned the bombardment of cannonballs? They're asking for a combo of 100 and we can barely get one above 30. The upcoming Die Hard challenge and stealth attack are no-goes as they both have the exact same roadblock. An iron ball that is in our way while we're using a flying jar. Collect rings. This time they only ask for a measly amount of 10. Play through the mission as normal, then, right before entering the goal, backstep into the tall wooden platform to find a hidden silver ring to automatically win. For the perfect challenge, we actually run into the exact same issue as the Die Hard challenge and the stealth attack. And closing this world, we overcome Captain Behemoth's Blue Storm. Moving on to the white skies of Skeleton Dome. So, post-production mod again? Just like the previous video, Skeleton Dome was unfathomably uneventful. Like, literally I only wrote down a 4-sentence paragraph the last time I talked about this place. This time around was almost no different. The vast majority of the missions were very much child's play. However, there are actually a few interesting things that happened, so we'll go over the three. We'll go over the 3 missions that I think were worth mentioning. First, hands off. After using this boost ramp, we need to step on this switch to open the gate. The problem is that it lets us off too far to the right, so it's literally just out of Sonic's reach. How can we possibly move forwards like this? Well, by going backwards. Bring Sonic to the opposite end until he hits the invisible wall. Let him move up a tiny bit, then press 2 while rotating the Wiimote backwards to execute the backstep skill. Each time we do this into the wall, Sonic will marginally slip to the left. The corridor we now have access to has a bunch of rings we can't avoid. However, there are numerous spike balls to the side, so I would say collect some of the rings to clear the path, go back to the invisible wall to backstep into it, then touch the balls to lose our money and reach the end. Next, no pearls. More like, no possible way to do this. I'm sure you can see the big, dumb walls of pearls that are in the way. I got creative and splash jumped onto this bony arch to soar above the obstacles, but they were both way too tall and way too curvy to pull it off successfully. And lastly, Chain of Rings. Get a combo of 50. This one requires a lot of tight inputs in order to maintain the chain. First, use the homing attack on the 2 flying chests to access the higher platform. Shoot Sonic out of the launch ring onto the next platform. Jump, and homing attack the metal cages with rings in them. Immediately press 2 to start running again. Jump and homing attack the first genie, then press 2 again and Aegislide past the second genie and meat cleaver. Use the boost ramp, slide into the rings, destroy the fire genie to grab the rings above it, then quickly land on the ground to run into the remaining few. This is where our Skeleton Dome discussion ends. Now let's finish everything off by entering the Unawakening Float, Night Palace. To start right off the bat, we get to ride a magic carpet in this world. We're unable to steer left and right, as that requires tilting the Wiimote. However, we're not at a complete standstill. Rotating the Wiimote lets us ascend and descend, so we do at least have a fighting chance during these sections. For the one in the main level, there was nothing to fret. All of the hazards were easily avoidable since they took up only a small chunk of the area. As it usually goes with the Win Genie missions, we race to win. This one is no exception. Thanks to the extra axis we were able to move in during the magic carpet ride, we were able to swoosh between all the rings in the hands-off mission. The same could not be said about the No Pearls mission. The left wall of pearls crosses over center, so there's no way to avoid them. Even placing Sonic in the top or bottom of the screen does nothing because of how tall it is. The Rampage and the Stealth Attack are two missions that contradict each other now that I think about it. Both are very doable here. During the Collect Rings mission, all of the riches in the spirit world were ours for the keeping. Chaining a ring combo of 100 in the next mission proved to be impossible. In the middle, there's a noticeable gap after the first grind rail where we're unable to collect any rings. Die Hard Challenge, Aegis Slider, Hands Off, the sequel. The very last strip has a bunch of hazards to make us go bankrupt. Then we had to beat the clock within 90 seconds. Hey, do me a favor, look at the screen for a minute. Now, judging by Sonic's speed, what do you think? And our last real mission is a perfect challenge. The boost panel right in front of us at the starting line sends us straight into a spike ball. Strangely enough, that entire section in front of us is automated. Kind of. Once we enter it, we're unable to use the 1 and 2 buttons. Although, tilting is still allowed. We can't really Aegis slide here, so you'd think we call it quits, right? Wrong! I'ma show y'all something wild. Watch what'll happen if we wait for 10 to 20 seconds. I did not do a single thing, that is how the game was programmed. Jump through the palace, then once we return to the spirit realm, we'll find a flying jar on an elevated surface and a barrier of spike balls below us. There's a moving spike ball directly above the jar, so we're going to have to find an opening somewhere in the barrier. If we step back, run forwards, and Aegis slide into them, they won't budge an inch. However, every time we collide with them, Sonic will shimmy slightly to the right. So we would need to keep doing that until Sonic is in a good position to squeeze through a small opening between them. The problem is that the right side doesn't have any good gaps to align with, so we can't pass through. The left side, however, does. But how do we move over there? Simply jump into the pot, then jump out of the pot to be in front of it. Despite there being a massive wall in front of us, Sonic can still lock onto the enemy on the other side. So, jump and use the homing attack, and that will lug us to the left. Backstep off the platform, and continually ram into the barrier until Sonic finally squirms through one of the incisions. That finishes up all of the main missions, but there are still 2 more boss battles before closing up. First is the duel against the Razor Jin. Aegis Slider. Finally, in the last chapter, we end off with a battle against the true final boss, Auf Layla Wa Layla. Unfortunately, in this fight, our skill ring gets quashed, so all of those nice buffs we've been using no longer takes effect as Darkspine Sonic. This is a big problem because we can't collect rings here. As you can expect, tilting moves us left and right, and all of the available rings are just out of reach. Sonic also naturally moves himself sometimes, but what he does, and when he does it, is kinda random. Like, here Sonic is slowly moving to the right, and then he sorta clips back to the left like he just hit an invisible force field. He never drifts far enough to gather any rings, so this needs to be a perfect run if we want to get through this in one piece. There is a small silver lining to this. Shaking the Wiimote now fills up our soul gauge in this battle, so we do have full control over our mana. And trust me, we're going to be heavily relying on our soul abilities. Speaking of which, the very first thing we do in this fight is fill up our soul gauge. Layla's first attack is 6 homing missiles. Using Speed Break here before he starts throwing them is the easiest way to breeze past them. He'll then get in our face to make 4 slashes. The first 2 will miss, but the third and fourth ones need to be jumped over. Following that is another pack of purple projectiles, and he creates 1 X-Slash. Pressing 2 is the easy way to avoid it, but if Sonic is in the correct position, shaking the Wiimote will actually lift him above the attack. After that, the big fat genie goes into the background to create a spirit bomb. There's only one way to not take damage from this thing, that being speed braking into it. Start shaking the Wiimote when Sonic starts pushing against it. If the gauge empties, we'll die. But if we can keep it up, Sonic will reflect the attack back at the boss. From there, speed brake into the now dazed Demiurge, and start vigorously moving the controller to thrash upon the exposed heart. Now we begin phase 2. Alfred opens up with indigo whirlpools. Their gravitational pull is very strong, so using time brake here will make them lose it. Jump above the middle one, then just as the one on the right goes off screen, press down on the D-pad to return to normal speed. The Newman tries to be slick and squeezes in a cheeky X-slash, so be prepared for that. Speed brake through 6 more projectiles, evade the next X-slash, and the cluster of slashes, fill up the soul gauge to return the spirit bomb back to its sender, then clobber Layla's heart again to defeat Eraser Jin once and for all. With that being the end of the game, let's take a look at the results and see how well we did. Out of the 21 missions and Lost Prologue, 19 can be completed without tilting the controller. To my surprise, Sand Oasis is 100% doable. In Dinosaur Jungle, 9 out of 12 missions are possible thanks to the log writing sections. For Evil Foundry, we get 12 out of 13. Levitated Ruin has a score of 10 out of 12. Pirate Storm is tonight's big loser, 8 out of 13. That is 5 whole missions we can't do. Skeleton Dome is 11 out of 12. And lastly, Night Palace, 12 out of 14. Adding all the missions together will give us a grand total of 94 out of 110. And if we do the math correctly, that means 85% of Sonic and the Secret Rings can be completed without tilting the Wiimote. To be honest, I am a little impressed by how doable this was. That's more than 3/4 of the game. Nice. I really do appreciate y'all sticking around to the end. You know, it means that I'm making a good video. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I hope you're having a wonderful month. And, just for the people who stayed this long, y'all get to watch a deleted scene. I came up with it when I was testing out different Secret Rings challenges, and eventually it got turned into that Sonic 4 joke I made. There really wasn't a good place to put it, and I thought it was too good to not edit, so, here it is. And now, the Patreon supporters, brought to you by Mod. Lots of spaghetti and page-fighting masters of Darku, Fossil, and Triff. Gianna Temarchka, Sunset Peli, and Tabitha Harvey Youssef. There's Augustus Renier, stop-motion stylish, Soma and Delta Arty, plus Kyle Prado, and Sonic X Shadow is coming out within a month. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for it. I probably sounded really monotone there, but I mean it. I'm excited. Ah!